Flow Riders, and welcome to another edition of The Flow. We are slowly creeping towards 100. This is really, really exciting. Really, really exciting. How you doing? I am your host, Doc Rock, along with my awesome other host.
Hey everyone, it's Katie.
It's Katie. I don't know why. I don't know why it's funny to me, because it's not funny, but I laugh every time, so I'm going to keep the tradition going. Anyway, today, Katie, what are we talking about?
We're talking about guests and interviewing and the tech and the best practices and the how to make everyone happy and the how to make a really great show when you're doing guests, co-hosts, panel discussions, all of that. So when it's not just you, what do you do when it's not just you?
Clean your room.
Oh gosh. Yeah, which I'm really excited about because I do think that there are, like anything else in the world of content creation and podcasting and video, there's a number of different ways that you can approach this. So please don't feel as if we say, if we give a suggestion, that doesn't mean that there's not a different way to do it. There are definitely best practices and things that are standardized, and there's standards for a reason. But there are, even within Ecamm, there's a couple different ways to bring guests into your broadcast. There's like different ways to, different processes for booking guests and for reaching out and inviting it. So there's some wiggle room in between. So take that with not a grain of salt, but keep that in mind as we talk this through, that just because you have a smaller budget or you manage your time differently doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't bring guests on. There's lots of options out there. Don't create any excuses in the wiggle room space. The wiggle room space is for you to figure out what works best for you and make sure that you're still doing the work.
There you go. All right. So, I guess I'll start with you, Katie. When it comes to interviewing people, what is like, let's do, how many should we do? Let's do 5 apiece. I feel generous today. So what is your number 1 of 5? That means they're going to get 10. See, and it's the end of October. It's like perfect.
Wait. My number 1 of 5 pro tips, questions.
Yeah,
what specifically are you asking me?
Let's go for pro tips while they put their questions together.
Okay, I like it. So my first tip is to have a really organized plan before you even reach out to your first guest. So have like a structure in place, know all of the details, think through what kinds of questions your guest may have for you in the experience. So have a process. And I guess my point B, I'm gonna give you an A and B. So
we're starting out with A and B. Okay, Katie's bringing the heat, people. She just off the camp. She fired up.
I'm fired up. So have a process, and I would, as a bonus tip, I would recommend building that process by being a guest on a ton of other shows. We've talked about this a lot, and every expert that I've talked to has started by knowing what that experience is like for a guest, and then put your guest hat on, and that's how you build out your guest process. Because there are things that you may not even think about if you've never been a guest. And we hear this all the time. Every time we bring someone on to an Ecamm stream, all of you Ecamm people are like, oh, I've never been a guest on an Ecamm stream before. So it takes some time and be a guest, because the questions that come up as a guest or as a co-host or as a panelist or discussion person, that experience is very different than hosting. And you will learn a lot just by the act of kind of putting yourself in those shoes. So be a guest first, use that experience to build a simple, streamlined process so that your guests, as you start inviting them, know what the experience is going to be like every step along the way.
All right, cool. I like that. And I'm going to follow that with an answer to a question that we got from Matt, which is, I prefer to be interviewed rather than to interview others. Are there tips and best practices for being the person interviewed? And yes, I love it. Number 1, absolutely. This is going to sound super stupid. You guys have heard it before, but I want you to stick to this one because trust me, it makes a difference. And the funny thing is, if I do it now, you're going to assume that it's faking, but you can totally hear it. And it's going to be hard for me to do because I've practiced it so much, I actually have a hard time. So I don't know if you noticed right now, but while I'm answering your question, I am absolutely smiling. You can hear the freaking smile, people. I know you think it's crazy, but you can't. Right? Now, it's weird because we're on video, so even more so, but you gotta check your face. I mean, like, absolutely try to smile when you're giving the answer to your questions. If it's something a little bit more somber, you can still, sit up straight and deliver your information, try to articulate it and take those pauses. The best thing you can do as a guest and as a host, it drives me batty for the people that can't do it. And I understand everybody doesn't have the same, I wouldn't call it training because I didn't go to Columbia School of Broadcasting. I taught myself. But I rarely or ah. If I or ah, I'm completely forgetting what I'm about to say and I need to gather that thought. So what I do, Matt, is eat the ums. And so for now, for the rest of this show, without even thinking about it, I just want you to count how many times I hit the button. It's extremely rare.
Don't
it's
count
extremely
mine.
rare. Extremely rare. Whenever my brain wants to go I just go. So I made that audible so you can hear it, but normally I just get to the point and I'm like, and then I'll gather my thought and then I'll go ahead and there's no reason whatsoever to every time. So just eat the There you go. That's the best thing you can do for they will love you because everybody else between every word. So if you can learn to eat the you're a gangster.
Yeah. I would add on to that and say, as a guest, one of the things that has worked really well for me is if the host doesn't have a clear process or kind of guide you through that experience, ask those questions up front so that you know what that experience is going to be like. So ask if they have, pre-planned questions that they're going to run through or if it's just going to be a more casual conversation. Ask what they're hoping to get out of the experience for their audience so that when you show up as a guest, you're able to deliver what the audience expects, right? So maybe they're bringing you on because you're an expert in a particular topic. And so, the topic of that show is, how to be a good interview guest or what have you. So you're ready with those talking points that are going to answer the questions of the person that is tuning into that episode. And sometimes hosts don't give that as clearly as they should. So certainly if you're on the other side, make sure that you're giving that information to people. Like what is the episode called? And are you as a guest ready and prepared to be providing information that answers the questions that are under that topic, right? Because the people who are tuning into that episode, there's an expectation based on the title and the description of the episode, what they expect to get out of it. Like, is it your personal story? Is it you're helping them, unlock something in the chat GPT verbiage of silliness? Like, what is it that is the purpose of that episode? And can you plan to deliver on it? And chances are you will anyway in the conversation. Otherwise, the host would never have invited you to be a guest. So don't overthink it too much, but definitely be ready to speak about the things that make you qualified to be a guest for that particular topic.
Love that idea. Especially, I think it's super important at all costs. And I don't know why people get asked to do an interview and then they forget that they are highly skilled at whatever it is that they're about to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You've been doing what you're about to do forever, but somebody back in 6th grade told you that public speaking is a problem. And so now you believe that mess. And so you are still sitting around going, oh, they're going to ask me questions. Am I the one who should be asked? Am I good enough to answer these questions?
I want to give an example from camp, actually, really quickly. So those of you who are at camp, we did a session, myself and Phil Palin, who is an incredible expert in branding, and he is the author of an upcoming book all about AI tools for small business. What I loved most about this session, and what I really want you all to hear, whether you were there or not, is that Phil answered a lot of questions with, I don't know. I'm working it out. I don't know the answer to that question, But here is the experience that I had while researching the book. So he was very clear about the fact that even though he literally wrote the book on AI tools for small business, he has a very set experience for why he wrote the book, what were the tools he researched, why he included them or didn't include them. And so he doesn't know all aspects of AI, and he may not be able to answer all of those questions. That doesn't make the interview any less compelling. At the end of that interview and the end of that conversation that we had, people learned a ton. People raved about the overall experience of getting to hear him. But what many people said was their favorite part about that particular session was just his realness in saying, hey, like, that's a really great question and we should all look more into that. Or, I didn't dive deep into that particular topic because I did these things instead, and here were my learnings from that. So just because you don't have all of the answers to something does not mean that you are not an incredible guest or the right person for that particular interview or the best fit for that content. So don't be afraid to answer honestly, and don't be afraid to just be real with people. No one is going to dismiss you or think that you were a terrible interview guest because you don't have every single answer to all the questions. And I say that as someone who still feels unnerved and put in a weird place when someone asks me. Every now and then I'll get like the rapid fire questions, and I really dislike those. So I try to only do interviews where I don't have those come at me. But in those moments, if there's one that I can't think of the answer fast enough, or I don't like the answer that I give, I'm like, pass. That's not a question I'm ready to answer, or I don't have a good answer for that. No one has judged me for reacting that way or saying that. And that is much better than me sitting here going like, I don't know what my favorite movie was when I was 8. I don't have like that experience is meant to be fun and to make the guest feel more like real and, get to know them a little bit better as a person. And just because that is something that I don't enjoy doing, I just need to be upfront with the host about that, or be comfortable with saying like, I don't want to answer that question, or I don't have a good answer to that question. That's fine. So a long-winded answer, but just be okay with not knowing everything. No one expects you to know everything. No one expects you to answer eloquently and perfectly to every single question. That's not how it goes.
Speak for yourself. I know everything. I'm joking.
Doctor. All right, Doc, what's your pro tip?
Well, this one is great because Sean asked a question. And first of all, Sean, congratulations on being one of the few that know how to spell our name properly. I don't know what the heck a scene is. Yes. Anyway, so Sean wanted to know, right now, who do we think does the best video podcast interviews, and why do you like their approach to interviewing? And I'm going to answer your question, but first I'm going to say why this is a pro tip. Number one, I definitely always listen to other people do interviews. I pick up things on how to be a good interviewer. I also pick up on things on how to be a good guest from listening to other interviews. Now, I'm going to say this person is a great interviewer, regardless of whether there was a video podcast or not, because one of the things that's so good about his style, I often forget that it's an interview. I want you to hear that. I want you to hear that. I want you to hear that. I want you to feel that in your soul. If you have no idea who Steve is, go watch one. I put the link in the chat. I'm answering Sean, but you'll see the link in the chat is Diary of a CEO. And one of the things that Steve does extremely well is just start a conversation and it becomes a conversation. I think there is a massive difference between an interview and a conversation. And I can't
100%.
I can't exactly express the delineation which separates them apart, but it's one of those things like a reticulated python. You know one when you see it, okay? You can't identify it, but trust me, when that retic pie coming at you, you be like, hey, mommy, I got to go. Peace. You're out of here. So just like that, when there's an amazing interview going down, you know it because it feels more like a conversation than an interview. Right. And I can pick up on a couple of ones. There's this, I doubt there's very many of you guys here, but there's a football fans, and I mean round, not oblong. And there's a show that comes on Sky in the UK, and it's called The Overlap. And it's basically two of Manchester United's former players who are, talking legends, Roy Keane and Gary Neville, and then Jamie Carragher, that jerk from Liverpool. and then Ian Wright, who's from the Arsenal, and they'll bring on an additional guest. And sometimes they have on Jill, who was probably the most successful female player ever to come out of the UK. And now she's a coach. And they just start talking, and it's a bunch of friends catching up on the subjects of football, but what's going on currently. And they'll often bring in an old player or bring in an old ref or an old coach or something. And you forget it's an interview because they're legit homies at a pub basically arguing. And what made Gary so smart, the way he put the show together, is they're breaking bread. Yeah. So you forget it's an interview. There's a plate of food, right? They have tea, of course. They're British. They have pastries to go with said tea. It's almost like a fika in Sweden. And they're literally just having a fantastic conversation. And you're so deep in that they don't even start and stop it the way we do. They started with them putting on makeup and sitting down and like, oh, look at these pastries today. Oh, these buggers look fresh, you know? And so when they start the conversation, it's because if Katie, Louise, Paul, Daniel, and I walk into a room, sounds like a joke, right? There's the black one, the Puerto Rican one, the old one. Okay, yeah, it's almost like a joke. If we were to go into a room, the first thing after the hellos is we just start talking while we're setting up. And I know this to be true because Katie was there the first time I met Diana in real life. Yo, we were together for like 8 hours before we realized it's the first time we met IRL. Yeah. Because we always talked all the time. And that's when it's epic, is when it's a great conversation. So, Sean, the answer to your question is Steve, Diary of a CEO, Steve Bartlett. And then the second portion of that answer is because it's very much so a conversation and much less an interview.
Yeah. And I really want to call out, and actually this is my next tip. So I will wind together, as you did, the great point that Jeremy just made in our live studio audience.
Jeremy made a great point.
Jeremy made a great point, and I'm going to wind it with my next pro tip, is that everything that Doc said is 100% accurate, and those are the kinds of moments that you want to experience. It is difficult as an interviewer, and a little bit less so, but still somewhat difficult as an interviewee to be able to achieve that without a good relationship with the person that you are talking with. And so in some cases, that may be that you know them well. And so like, obviously, if we brought Diana or Luis or Daniel or Paul or any of people that we've spent time with either online or in real life onto a show, I would have to do very little prep work in order to achieve exactly the kind of conversation and interview that I was looking for, because I know them. I know what their values are. I know what their expertise is. I know what they can bring to my audience. I know my audience really well. If you're bringing someone on that you don't have one of those relationships with, you are definitely going to need to spend time with them by researching and or getting on a prep call with them in advance. So there's a couple different ways, again, that you can do this. You could just read their books, listen to their podcasts, like dive deep into their content to get a better relationship with them and a feel for how they may answer questions. And if you have the time, arrange for them to come on early and do like a mini, like just a conversation to get to know them better, get to know the projects that they're working on, the kinds of things that they may answer or want to talk about in the interview, which serves two purposes, really. It could work as your tech check to make sure that they're all set up and ready to go. It'll make them feel significantly more comfortable. And it'll also help you not over prep and overthink the questions, because that's what makes it feel more like a stagnant interview versus a conversation, right? Is the idea of like, well, I have 10 questions I have to get through and I've pre-planned them out and AI has helped me. And if I don't read off all of these questions, then my interview is not going to be successful. You want to avoid that. Like having an idea of what your questions are, or even the questions written out, is great, but allowing the conversation to flow because you've done the research and you've spent time with this person, either by getting to know them better, like in a third party way, or directly talking with them, is how you're going to maintain those conversations and make your interviews better. So some combination of that, depending on your time, I think is really important. And Jeremy said something similar, that in order to achieve those conversations, you really do need to put the work in. And the work really is in researching, building a relationship, understanding them better, or spending a bit of time early with them so that you know what kinds of answers and you know how the conversation is going to flow. Some people like Doc and I are really chatty, so it's super easy to be able to do a conversation. Other people might be really quiet and it's hard to pull things out of them. And you're not going to know that unless you know them a little bit better.
Thank you. Thank you. Love you, Daniel. Okay, listen, I want to give you a follow on to this. And Katie said it. I just want to make sure you hear this because I picked this up from a person who I respect who sort of taught me the interview game. And he said, don't be lazy. Read the damn book.
Read the book.
If they got a book, fam, you have to read the book. Like, even if you read it fast, even if you go through like 25 pages, like in scatter, one flip, scatter, just so you have a general gist. It's very important. Nowadays, if you can get it in PDF form, you know what? You can ask your man Chad to give you like a 10-page synopsis that you can read really quickly. So please read
get
the
on
book.
early with them and have them if you don't have time to read the book or you're not a big reader and they have a book, then definitely schedule an early interview. Say, hey, I just want to do a tech check. We're going to spend 15, 20 minutes. And your only question in that is, hey, give me a little bit more information about your book. How did you go about, get them to give you the information from the book in that tech check, getting to know you moment, because you'll check off both boxes. So figure out a way to do that, but get the information. Do not, as Doc said, do not go in there blind. Don't go in and not have any idea what their content is about. You need to know. It will come up. You need to know.
Okay, so the other part of that is this is a deep cut from my course, but I think it's very important that you dig, if they've been around for a minute, dig deep and find some of their smaller interviews. So in other words, let's say I'm going to interview Rich and I find out that some of the earliest interviews were just with people from the Ecamm fam. But for whatever reason now, Rich is massive. He's huge. So he's been on Oprah. He's been on Jake Tapper. He's been on, some of The View. Like whatever reason, something came out. He discovered this secret to marketing promotions, and all of a sudden becomes one of the most famous people in the world. I have seen those interviews, but I'm going to dig for the deep cut. I'm going to find the old school interview that he did with Michelle or the old school interview that he did with Hank and dig out a gem from way back bus. Mm-hmm. And then go, years ago when you were interviewed by Hank Russell, Hank asked you about your love for the Dallas Cowboys and you had a pretty funny answer. And he's going to be like, what the? Man, you've done your research. Think I'm joking? Watch Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert breaks the interview every time because you're like, how did you know that? That's what you're looking for. When you can pull a deep cut, how did you know that? Then you have crushed said interview. Absolutely crushed that interview. And to follow on what Katie said about being prepped, this is a difficult one for people to wrap their head around, but it is the cornerstone of the course. Mm-hmm. Prepare, but not too much.
Prepare, but not too much. I think it's
you have to have a level of curiosity that is almost childlike. And if you watch the Steven that I mentioned earlier, Sean, you'll see it in his face. The level of unadulterated curiosity that crosses that brother's face as he asks these questions is amazing. Also, don't be afraid to ask. This drives me nuts because I hate doing it, but I do it anyway. If your audience has the stupid question, don't be afraid to be the one for you to ask it to them anyway. So you eat the stupid and you ask the stupid question, even though that one drives me crazy the most. I can't stand it. And I mean, like, some people do it well, like, I really didn't want to ask this one, but people keep asking me, so I'm going to ask it. Like, don't do that. You have to take the knife. Okay. So when you're about to ask Katie a stupid question, I know and I hate this because I hate asking the question that's been asked 1,000 times. But if the audience is going on and on and on about the mushroom paper, I'm like, Katie, what's the story behind the mushroom paper? Inquiring minds need to know. I can't go, oh my God, this is a really stupid question. I'm sorry the first stupid question, but everybody wants to know, Katie, what's going on with the mushroom paper? No, you're the host. So you have to eat that.
The thing, too, to keep in mind with that, and this is just, I realize this the more that I am either an interviewer or an interviewee, a lot of those, like what Doc was calling stupid questions, are repetitive questions, but it's always a different audience. So you could actually like preempt that by either letting the interviewee know, like upfront, like, hey, like my audience is new to you, so I am going to ask a couple of like basic questions as we get going, just so that they can get to know you better and we get that out of the way before we dive deeper. Or you can do like a more detailed bio, either in the description and show notes and the marketing before the episode, or right at the beginning of the episode, that says like, hey, hey, I'm Doc. I'm hanging out here with Katie. And Katie is a live streamer and content creator, and she works for Ecamm. She recently updated her entire studio, and now she's rocking these awesome mushroom background. Like, you could add in what you know are the common questions into your intro for someone to get it out of the way. But the thing about it is that it's actually good for the interviewee to answer those questions, because it means that that's an audience that has not interacted with them before. If they don't know the answer to that question, it means that they have the potential to be a customer or a subscriber or a fan or a follower or a community member of the person that you're of the people that you're putting that guest in front of. So I think figuring out a way to embrace that is actually probably pretty important, because it may seem like eye roll and redundant to both the interviewer and the interviewee, but it's not to the audience, and the value that's there, I think, is actually pretty important. So it's good thing to bring up, Doc, because I think it's important to remember that sometimes those things that we all think are really obvious aren't to the new person that's in, and that new person might bring a ton of value to you or to your guest down the road, or both. So
I'm going to give this is a style thing, because I have somewhat of an opposite, and not to be counterintuitive or cantankerous. I do not like to posit the questions that are in every other interview. Mm-hmm. So in my prep, one of the reasons why I listen to like 10, 15 of their other interviews is I try to go get the new questions. I try to go get something different. And to that point, my pro tip is, if you can pull it off, I know some of you guys are nervous and you can't pull it off. First of all, nervous is a mental state. Well, actually, it is a mental state now that I think about it. Anyway, I go out of my way to ask the different questions. I also don't like to spend a single second on the bio.
Yeah.
I do an introduction, but I don't go into, hey, Katie, so you're into video podcasting. How did it all start? I was like, dude, I watch dudes pull. I worked in a nightclub for 30 years. I watch dude pulls out a nightclub, and the girl just looks at them. Occasionally, they throw a drink in their face. I'm like, hey, what's your favorite color? Like, if you ask a person that on a date, male or female, you should get punched in the face. Like, that is a stupid question. That one you figure out by yourself. You don't need to ask that question. Hey, what's your sign? Did you come here often? Like, those kind of dumb. I try to avoid those questions. I am always looking for, no one has ever asked me that before. Oh my goodness, that is an awesome question. That's what I'm looking for. So yeah. I try to put the bio in the description, or like Katie said, which I agree with, try to put those little nuggets in the, hey, today I'm introducing Katie Fawkes. She just created this incredible video podcasting course. If you are curious about how to start a video podcast, make sure you go out and check out Katie's course. It's at ecamm.com. I forgot the link. Oops. Paul's going to put it in the chat. Anyway.
I'll put it in the chat.
But, I would just say these things, and then I will even bring up, so we're going to have a lot of fun. Notice her Canadian accent is wearing off, so I can lead to a question or lead to an announcement later. and get right in and just
Yeah.
go to something crazy. So then I might, while we're doing the interview, say to you, okay, so now that you've been officially American for like over a year, do you find yourself more angry?
Every day. Yeah.
With me.
I think, I mean, I agree. I definitely have a little bit of a different style than you. I do tend to do intros
We just
probably
got Amesbury
a little
people.
bit.
You watch it happen in real life. This does tend to happen. We're going to give Amesbury a second.
Look at me.
Okay, it's
Can
coming.
you hear me
back.
still?
It's coming. We can hear you. I was like, we just got
Okay.
Amesbury.
We can just
keep going.
We can talk through how terrible my face looks here. We can. Well, Luis.
All right, you're coming back. You're coming back. It happens. It always freezes you on the weirdest face. That's the best part about the internet. It does it on purpose.
It does it on purpose. I'm comfortable with my weird face. What was I saying? Oh, I was saying
we have a different style.
I do a different style. So I ask a lot of questions that Doc would probably think are dumb questions or questions that have been asked before. I'm doing it for a little bit of a different reason. Part of it is that for the mass majority of the content that I'm creating and the interviews that I'm doing, I'm in front of a audience who are brand new to the topic and might not actually know that person or know that background. I think it also makes the guest feel a little bit more comfortable because it's a bit of a softball question. So like I know when I'm a guest on a show, I like it, especially if I haven't done like a prep interview, like a prep time on camera with the host, it is a nice kind of way to get into it a little bit and start talking about something in a way that like I don't feel I'm going to mess up. That like I can tell you what my background is. Like all those questions are very easy for a guest to answer. So I think there is a use case for them. Yeah. That being said, I do think that everything you just said, Doc, is a really great perspective as I get better at interviewing people and better at being a guest. You're right. I think there are ways to do it that still tease out that information, but also get to the point. Because again, as you just said at the end of your answer, many times there's a goal to the interview, right? So even though I'm the podcasting expert that's joined your show, I'm really there to sell everyone my free podcast course. And you're there to help your audience understand more about podcasting. So at some point, like we do have to get to the point, and my entire background isn't really all that relevant. What's relevant is you need help with podcasting. I have the answers to help you with podcasting. Doesn't really matter that I'm from Canada or I have a mushroom background or whatever else. People might want to know. It's kind of irrelevant to this. So I think you're right sometimes I'm definitely guilty of not just getting to the point, and people really in the end want the content. Like the personality and the backstory and the peopleness of it all is important, but people also don't have a ton of time and just, and need the content that they are expecting to get and are looking for. So setting those expectations, again, I think is really clear. Like, what are the expectations of your audience? What are your expectations? And what are the expectations of the interviewee? And are you hitting all of those?
So so to your point, this is actually a good way to do this. Number one, very important that you are leading the interview for your audience, not necessarily for yourself. You might have questions, but save yours for the end. Be like, hey, I got a personal question, or I have a question that I want to know the answer to. Yeah. Save those to the end. And if you know that it's a 3-point question type of show or a 4-point question type of show, don't bury the lead. Like a lot of people out, they think they're going to bury the lead in order to increase the watch time. But more and more today, we understand how people work. They might not get to the end. Daniel had to leave, right? So if I was doing an interview that I know Daniel wanted to know the answer to this question because maybe he pre-sent the question or it's just something I heard him mention in the community, I'm going to front load value. I'm going to ask the questions that will give the audience the most value up front and then put the bantery joints at the end. We were just talking about this, Luis, Katie, and I, because we were at a conference with 4 people we were dying to see. Normally at the conference, we know most of the speakers, but these are our friends, but we wanted to hear their input on this conversation. I believe back then, the conversation was on the state of AI and podcasting. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4 heaters on the stage. right? Two of which are our dear friends, which we can just ask them later. But we got heaters on the stage, and the dude spent, I want to say 20 of the 30 allotted minutes for this panel asking them their bio. I'm like, fam,
introducing
I
them.
got a program. I know their bio. Like, don't need to introduce them like people. Listen, these guys are incredible. Trust me, you're going to want to go and dig up their bios and dive in. You want to check out their sites. The links are in that program you have there. They'll be on the slide behind us. Scan this QR code so you can know about them. But we have such a limited time today. I want to get straight to some of these questions. Is AI going to kill us or not, Jeff? Go straight in. Like, the bio stuff, it just takes too long and unnecessary. And right away, again, give them time to promote their thing. I think Jeff does a good job at that. And actually, Jeff mentioned this at camp. Well, another place where Jeff and I differ, I refuse to questions. I refuse, because that will jack my curiosity, because I will go dig the answers to the questions even before they say so, because I can't help it. Like, those TV shows that hit you with the cliffhanger at the end of the season? Those shows make me angry because I'm stuck for like 2 years waiting for George R.R. Martin to finish this damn story. And I'm like, bruh, you crushing me. You're absolutely crushing me. So for me, open loops don't work. So I don't do those pre-questions, because I'll be sitting there with that open loop until the interview comes. And that's going to drive me batty. So you have to find your style, whatever works for you. There's no right or wrong per se. There's no right or wrong per se, but whatever your style is, pick one. And you might not know your style until you've done a bunch of interviews. So guess what the shortcut is? Do a bunch of interviews.
I mean, honestly, the only, as I said at the very beginning of this episode, the only non-negotiable is not doing it. Like, if you want to do interviews and you have a show that interviews are included in the style, then you have to put in the work and do the interviews, and you have to put in the work and be a guest so that you understand the process. How you set up your guest intake form and your scheduling and the kinds of ways you ask questions and how long the show goes and whether or not you take questions from the audience, all of that is completely open to your discretion. You can change it. Just because you start one way does not mean that you can't evolve into something else. How how many guests you have on, how you approach all of that, like the tech check, all of it is flexible in what works best for you. You need to be open and honest with your communication so that you set appropriate expectations for everyone. Give everyone the information that they need correctly. Don't change things halfway through the process for people. And you have to do it. Like, you have to do a tech check. You have to go through the process of just doing the interview. So everything else, you're right, I think is like, you might change. There have been times where I've written questions out, and like you, Doc, I feel like if I have questions in front of me, then I'm looking down at them. I'm worried that I haven't asked the question. I lose the magic of the conversation. So I'm way better without them. I just don't do it. I do the research. I don't write any questions down. I let the way the conversation goes gives me ideas for other kinds of questions, and I'm watching what my audience says and pick up questions that way. And it just works better for me. But Jeff C. does interviews all the time, and he always has the questions, and his show is fantastic. So it depends on what works best for each person.
Yes, correct. Now, my five ends with Stuart, because Stuart is one of my favorite people on the planet right now. I have no idea why, just Stuart's cool. So Stuart says, as an interview, I often forget to listen as I'm thinking of my next question, looking at the tech, running order. Is this normal, or should I just chill and enjoy the chat?
You might need a producer, Stuart.
I'm gonna answer your question, Stuart. And number one, what Katie said is true. But this is my fight with the Ecamm fam on a regular basis. This is my fight with the Ecamm fam on a regular basis. And I say it 3 times because I want you to hear me closely. This is my fight with the Ecamm fam on a regular basis. Many people, for whatever reason, I'm going to call it, I won't say inexperience because it's not necessarily the case. I think it's an inferiority complex of I'm new. So because I'm new, I must like do something to get attention. And what you should be doing is because I'm new, I'm going to make sure that I'm not creating any undue attention so that I can focus on the product. Okay? So when you watch my show, I don't have transitions, not a one. Twirly scenes, nope. Animations, none. Unnecessary, cute overlays, nope. Nothing high tech. I do it like I call it the little black dress setup because it's plain, it's beautiful, and the value is in the packaging. A little black dress on a hanger is useless. A little black dress with a wonderful human being inside that enjoys said conversation with, tell stories, and regale days of yesteryear, that's valuable. So I put the value in the product of the show, not the packaging. The packaging can always be adjusted. We live in the world of video editing. You got the raw ISOs. If you want your show to look cute after, open Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere, the now defunct app who should remain nameless, and knock yourself out. Twirl all kind of crap over there. But when I'm doing my show, it looks like this. It's me and Katie having a deep conversation that helps you guys. Us having a twirly background, welcome to the flow. That's for our ego, homie. That's not for the audience.
Yeah.
And it sounds counterintuitive because we're Ecamm and we can do all of those things. But I have a damn near 200 horsepower vehicle. What I don't do is drive around in the freeway at its top speed of 165. Why? Because even with my brother-in-law being a sergeant in Honolulu Police Department, that ticket I will not get out of.
Yeah.
If I'm doing 70 in the 55, I might get out of that ticket. Doing 165 in the 55, nope. Boom, clink, gone.
Yeah.
So just because you can don't mean you should. And too many people are trying to fly a 747 when they can't even walk. So you answered your question. Stuart, my brother, who I dearly love, chill, enjoy the conversation, and don't do too much cute stuff in you. That is a sign. You know, it's a thing. Those people who dress flashy but have no soul, they have no... I'm trying to think of it. They're a common character in movies, like the over-the-top person who is basically otherwise useless.
Yeah.
Like, that's what happens when your show looks all dope, but you have no skill. You have no ability to interview. That is legit hiding behind the tech. And I think it's important, and there was a conversation that came up with Camp, is that please get good at what you do first, make it cute second.
You could, I absolutely agree and echo all of that sentiment. What you can do, what I have found to be helpful for me is I have, as Doc said, simplified absolutely everything down. Excuse me. Simplified absolutely everything down to the basics, but I always have a scene with just me and a scene with just the guest. I actually don't even have any backgrounds on it. I just have the guest. So if I'm having a moment where I'm like, my mind is on overdrive and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to ask them next? Or I don't know. And they're talking, I just switch over to only them so that I can think for a second, look down at my notes, catch up with what I'm doing. So like you have things that you can do that make it really easy that are not also going to cause additional stress because you're like, I'm trying to trigger this and go into preview mode to do whatever. Literally just move it over so that they can keep talking. You're showcasing them and what they're doing. And then just take a moment to look at your notes, catch your breath, calm your mind, and then go back to the scene where it's you and them talking.
Yes.
And it's totally, it's not, I am that person where I had those same feelings for a little bit, Stuart, but the more you practice, the less you'll have those feelings. So just start with interviewing friends or people you trust, where if it goes all wrong, they've got your back and they'll cover for you. And then once you've gotten through those and feel comfortable with it, just calm yourself down. Like it also, not every interview has to be 30 minutes or an hour or whatever else you've put in your mind. Like this is what happens to me is I'm having a great conversation. I look down and I'm like, oh shoot, I have 20 minutes more that I have to carry this conversation, but I've asked all the questions. End the episode.
Yes.
Wrap up.
Yes.
If you're done, you're done. Like there's no point in me being like, oh, panic mode. I need other questions. You're the one that's in control. So that was my easy hack and working my way around that. Or as I said, having a producer backstage so that you're not worried about that also makes a big difference, right? Like I look terrible right now, but when Luis pulls all of our files and does Luis magic to everything, I'll look fine in the replay. You can still hear me, so I can still get the content across to people who are watching us live. Everything is fine. But if I was producing, I would be like, oh shoot, did I remember to put on my isolated files? How am I going to think about that later? Like that would be causing unnecessary stress and anxiety that takes away from the value of the conversation. So for this particular show, way easier for me to have a producer who can run it and make sure that they fill in any gaps and solve any problems as they come up, right? So just think about what you're able, right? There's Luis, right? So like, think about what you're able to afford, manage, orchestrate, like think that through. But you're only going to learn that by practicing. You're only going to learn that by failing and being like, oh, don't want to do that next time. Switching it up for next time.
You said something that was extremely valuable in that conversation. And it's super funny. So first of all, Stuart, listening is the most important part of being an interviewer. And I think that is one I go deep into the course, but I'll shorten it for today about you have to remain curious. And part of that will require the listening. It allows you to, the next question is going to come. Just like any conversation you have with anybody, there's always going to be some unanswered questions, and realize that if you, like Kitty said, if you're short, wrap it up. If you're long, wrap it up and invite them to come back. So that just does the George R.R. Martin, leave them hanging. They can't wait till the guest comes back. If it's really, really powerful, be like, I was going to do something else next week, but this is such a good conversation. Can we continue this? Or do you mind us running long and we'll just chop it up as a two-parter for the delivery, which is going to be the actual show? So one of the things that I do, and you guys might not notice this, or maybe you do, because it's a video podcast, right? I have my little Muji fountain pen right here, and I have my little notebook right here. So while I'm listening, I am taking those notes so that I can run a follow-up. And the note is just a single word, right? I look down on my paper, and I see a single word about wrap it up. Well, that's 3 words, but you know what I'm saying? I can write that really quickly. I can scribble it. I can make an icon, something that's going to allow me to bring that back to the table. So one of the key things I'm going to say about an interview question, this is my pet peeve. This is going to be number 6, sorry, but this is my pet peeve. And as you watch TV now, this is going to drive you crazy too. I'm going to act this out. So let me get my... Katie, during the VHS clubs, you guys get into older movies from basically the 90s to maybe occasionally 2000s, maybe occasionally 80s. Of these many genres that you guys get into, which one of those genres do you find yourself the most connected to? Is it the rom-com? Is it the comedy? Is it the dramedy? Is it the drama? Is it the documentary? Is it the horror? Like, I'm really curious as to, like, especially in the 80s or 90s, like, which one did you think is better? Was it shut up.
I'm so guilty of this. I always do this. I'm trying to
ask the question and shut the up. That is the way I teach it in my course. I do not edit the word. Ask the question and shut the up, because you're rambling because you're quote unquote nervous. Nervous of what? I don't know. Plastic camera cannot hit you. The building's not going to fall. The earth's not going to end. The Raiders definitely not winning the Super Bowl this year. Like, what are you nervous about? Ask the question and shut up. Shut up, please. That's my protest. I know it's hard, but that does come from practice.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm definitely still practicing that. I find myself doing that every now and then. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. And you just get better at it as
when do you
again,
notice it?
as you do more.
Right. When do you notice that you did it? Because honestly, I don't notice that you did it. So if you notice it, then that means that you're doing a good enough job of hiding it.
I don't. I don't think I've done it a lot on this show because again, I have you to kind of bounce questions and ideas off of. But I have done it in the past on Meet the Ecamm fam, and I've also done it in like other like one-off interview shows and things that I've been involved with. I'm also and I wanted to add. And then we should really wrap it up as our notes tell us to wrap it up. But I wanted to add to that. It's a good reminder that not everything has to be a question either. I find I actually get more content and value out of a guest when I ask the question, they answer the question, and then I respond back to their answer as if it's a conversation. But it's not a question. It's like, great point, Doc. I remember the last time that I did that, and I was like, oh shoot, I shouldn't do that next time. And then Doc says, oh, when did you do that last time? Like, so you can also give information without answering a question that helps relate to your audience, that gets the guest to think about something else they wanted to add or say, that maybe dives deeper into a topic. So it's not always a question. Sometimes it's just you responding as if you're having a conversation because you're having a conversation. So it's a two-sided thing. Don't feel like because you asked the question, they answered it. You're like, well, on to question 2. Question 2 is this. Like, you can respond and dive deeper on topics if you are listening to them and you think the answer that they gave is valuable and you want to contribute to it. I think that's completely fine. So maybe I'm wrong in that, but that's my feeling on it.
No, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. So letting them say something that it then evokes a curiosity or a secondary point, like, oh, you know what? I have a point that I want to add to that. And even if the point is different, now I'm going to give you a little bit of a pass, but I still want you to try to hold it in the back of your head. I know that you are always trying to deliver the value because you are helping the quote unquote new people, the beginners. That's to meet the fam is to let people overcome their fear and for them to dig further. So I think part of the reason why you might lead a question is you're trying to make sure that the guest doesn't go far too technical or take it too far away from the center of the conversation. I still would say don't lead the answer. It is better to have the follow-up question. So if you say to me, Doc, why is it that in the middle of my stream, occasionally the stream will get stuck and then speed up and go down? And I go, well, that's the nature of RTMP. That's not something that Ecamm can solve. All of the people that are really, really hung up on sync are not understanding just sound waves in general. If you are doing something with RTMP kind of grabs the signal, and then you're like, okay, at the end of that question, you'd be like, RT what? No, I'm joking. Listen, most of the people in the audience are going to be relatively new. So is there a way you could restate that in more of a Katie answer? And I'll be like, okay, well, that's just the nature of the tech. The way RTMP works is sort of like a fire bucket brigade. And when there's a missing bucket, it doesn't know what to do with that missing bucket. Whereas people, we would just let that one fall on the ground, grab the next one and keep going to put the fire out. RTMP will spend the next 3 hours looking for that missing bucket. When it catches it, it'll catch it. And that's why even on Netflix, sometimes you'll see the audio speed up or the picture kind of go grainy for a second and then come back. That's RTMP at work. It's just the nature. It's nothing you can do, nothing Ecamm can do. Just enjoy your show. Right. So that's how you can do it. That way you don't have to try to lead the question to lead them to give the ID10T answer. But you can still get to the ID10T answer.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the best way to do it instead of leading the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you guys know. Now you guys have an answer.
Well,
I'm laughing
we
at
did it.
Valerie and Hank are just having their own conversation.
They are. Hallery is having their own conversation. Well, I want to start closing up, but what I will say here at the end of this episode is that within the Ecamm fam and within kind of our world of all the shows that we do, there are so many opportunities to practice interviewing. So whether you want to be a guest on Meet the Ecamm fam, or you want to drop a note into the Facebook group or into the Discord and ask for interview guests, or say that you want to be a guest, it is so easy for all of you to get started in practicing this. Even if you're just looking to get a little bit better and you're not yet ready to like have a show with guests or do something on a regular basis, I think it's a really incredibly important step to take to get those reps in and practice that. So please take advantage of that. We really do work very hard to foster a space that gives you every opportunity to practice using these different tools. And again, with Ecamm, you can do it through Zoom and through our Zoom integration, which actually is been my new favorite way. And I'm almost wondering if my internet would even be better in Zoom, but Zoom has been my new favorite way to do this. And then interview mode also is a great option as well. So lots of opportunities for you to be able to do that. Please take us up on that. Please take each other up on that. It really, the confidence and the ability to do it really well comes from the practice. You have to do the practice to get there. So please do that.
And I did want to say something that we can walk out of here on, which is just, sorry, I'm super giggling and laughing. This is totally different because this is more about being a guest in the chat. People, for someone the guest who's already nervous, okay, Katie's my guest, I'm the host, I'm running this show. When you ask her about the shelf that you can see above her head, you just wrecked her entire confidence for the show. It's not important to the conversation. It's not relevant to the conversation. Do not ask that question. It's like coming to somebody's house and saying, "Hey, man, do your kids got clean drawers on?" Like, it's irrelevant. I'm not trying to be evil here, and you can save that for the after show, but we're at home, right? Me and Katie are at home right now, so it doesn't matter in this particular case. But I see you guys do this all the time. Even when we show up to shows where we're Ecamm fam in somebody else's community that's not ours, occasionally we do have crisscross applesauce people. Like, for instance, I found Mr. Camera Junkie in a Nick Nimmon stream. But for you to ask those type of technical situations while the show is about something else is not a good guest. It just isn't. You wouldn't go to somebody's house and ask them, what type of lubricant do you use? Like, it's just not a good question. So
and the answer,
save those,
the answer
email
to it
those.
is that the shelf is actually pretty far from me. It's way back, so I can't hit my head, I promise. But you are right.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
questions like that do distract. I feel that often where you're like,
you can make, if the guest is nervous, you could break the guest. They can't come back from that. And so all you did was you solved your problem because you have OCD or whatever, but you just broke the entire interview. I have watched somebody break the interview for Kathy, and it ruined the show that Kathy was so excited to have a guest on. And she's already nervous, and she's a consummate professional. She's a great chef. And somebody asked a question about her microphone when there was nothing wrong, by the way, it was them. And she spent the whole show worried about it and completely ruined the Black Friday stream.
Ruined the show.
Where she had put all this effort in this prep and this whatever. Like, we can't fix internet problems live. They just happen. We know this. We're recording. So we just keep going, right? We can't fix this little screen thing that's going on with Katie right now. Right? We're recording. The recording will be gangster. But the show, like now what would happen is when you mentioned that, Katie's fumbling and like now she's trying to figure it out. Like those of us who are the spotters, we have her what is that thing on your phone with the little green bubble? Text. We can text her. We can Slack her. We can give her those informations. And if I'm the first person to say you're on mute, fine. I don't watch 3 other people say you're on mute and then add mine. Because they already know. They caught it the first time. Right? Yes, things like that. It's really hard to be a good netizen. I know a lot of this is new to people. I know a lot of us have these questions, but like I saw that question and I'm glad she ignored it. I ignored it because we know better. But listen, please, by all means, it is super hard, especially because we're Ecamm fam and we know the tech. Don't ask them a tech question in not a tech Q&A session. Like if Angelique is telling you about your finance, don't ask her what camera she's using. She's trying to tell you how to save money to get out of your mortgage, and you start asking her about her camera, it's none of your business. Look in the description. It's probably in the description. There you go. I'm done.
It is worth just adding, and I think everyone here knows this, but if you're listening to this and you're not a host or is using any of these tools regularly, Ecamm definitely has this. Most of the other recording tools have this as well. There is the option to turn off the comment view when you're doing an interview, so that when your guest joins the interview, they actually don't see the comments, so that leaves it so you as the host can choose to mention comments or feature comments on screen as you want the guest to see it. And in cases where you have a guest who is not used to doing this, especially in a live scenario, you might want to do that, because like a lot of people who are doing live streams often and are used to the live chat might find it reassuring or fun or, great to see kind of comments and feedback come through. But many of them, it might just be too much and distracting and make it feel scarier than it needs to. So that's kind of worth, it's worth keeping in mind, like, who is the guest and what is your audience like, and are you doing it live? And if that's the case, you might want to check that box and just not have that chat showing to people, and just tell your guest, hey, just stay here in this environment. Don't watch the stream while we're going. We're just recording. We're having a conversation. People are watching. So like think about those things. And again, you're only going to think about them if you go through and practice and do it and see what happens, or what kinds of things your audience is asking. So that's a really good point, Doc. And I think it's a training for your audience, but also it's worth knowing as a host and as an interview guest, because it may change how you do that interview as the host, right? Like maybe your audience asks lots of tech, like Ecamm customers always ask lots of tech questions, right? That's why we have Paul in the chat who says, right now we're only talking about podcasting, et cetera. So we could ignore those, but if we had a guest coming on who was nervous, we might just turn off the chat and just not have them have that as an option to see.
Yeah. And I like that. And for your tech questions, people, please come Friday. Like I'm sitting there on Friday, you have me for a solid hour, and the fam will show up, and we'll talk about Japanese whiskey or something, because y'all ain't came through. So every other Friday, you could ask me everything down to the wire. This Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I will be locked in the Zoom room waiting for you to ask me these crazy questions. Yeah. But I want to remind you right now. I'm going to say this one more time. With the exception of Angelique, because she's having a crazy tech problem. By the way, Angelique, check the new minis. Every piece of gear you need to create the show that is going to save you from sitting still, you already own.
Yep.
You don't need to buy anything else. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm going to be here next week with a brand new gear telling you to buy it. But you don't need to buy anything else. All you need to do is have Ecamm and this.
Yep.
Everything else is gravy. It does not matter. Mm-hmm. Turn what you have on, create 25 pieces of content before you think about using your credit card for another thing. Make that promise to yourself. I will create 25 pieces of content before I buy another freaking wire. Yep. Try that for size.
Yep.
Because I'm telling y'all, I see some of y'all still planning. And I'm like, what are you planning? You got 6 subscribers. What are you planning? What you need to do is do your show.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about that today. All right. Do the day.
Well, we We
People,
did
this
it.
has been the flow.
I was worried for a second. I was like, I don't know. Do we have enough to say about interviewing? But we did. I'm excited.
I got a whole course. I could do this for 5 hours.
It's true. Sorry, continue on, Doc. You were giving your outro.
We're going to wrap this joint up. Next week, we are going to do a really cool interview. I get to be a guest next week. Katie will be the host. I will be guesting with my partner in crime, Mary Lou from Creators Unstuck. So we're going to come here. If you have these questions, if you feel stuck in any way, shape, or form, please get them suckers written down or send them in to marketing@ecamm.com. And then in your subject matter, just put RE Unstuck and send them to Katie, so that she can give Mary Lou and I the questions. And it's funny, Katie, you mentioned you don't like rapid fire questions. One of the things that Mary Lou does at the end of the show, which has become my favorite part of the show, is she's like, all right, rapid fire questions, Doc, here you go. And I have no idea what they are. In our runner show, it has a huge, gigantic font. Doc, do not look in here, because she writes them down so that she can have them. And I'm always on the notion, like, I kind of want to click it. Because my brain does not like these
I would
things.
have to click it. Yeah, Virgo moves. I'd have to click it.
Thank you. Okay, because you're Virgo. You get it. I never click it. It drives me insane. I'm like, Mary Lou, just don't even put it there, because I'm hovering going, click it. Don't click it. Click it. Don't click it.
Yeah, because I need to be perfect, because Virgo vibes. And so I want to know the questions so I can answer them, because I don't want her to be like, this question. And people are like, I don't know. Yeah.
All right, there you go. So Val's going to create 25 pieces of content, and Paul is going to buy Val a new Mac Mini. You guys heard it first here on The Flow. Absolutely love that setup. Ladies and gentlemen, The Flow is brought to you anytime on English. You can find us at flow.ecamm.com. That's what I was trying to say. You can find us at flow.ecamm.com. Go over there, drop us a review, leave us a question, leave us a voicemail. Anything that you want to know about The Flow, please send it over there, including questions for next week. And we got to give a massive shout out to Captivate. Captivate has come through every time. If you're looking for a place to host this new show, check out Captivate FM. My favorite thing about Captivate is they're designed to help you grow. Paul, my credit card number is 0. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to The Flow. This is just absolute. That was a great show, Kates.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. You all brought such amazing questions, and again, like, if we can just say it over and over again, like, no one is perfect at this. You have to practice to get there. You don't get confident without being scared and working your way through it and failing and learning and growing and doing. So please, just try. Just get out there and try. If you need help or want anyone to jump on with you.
All the mistakes I make,
so
how do you not know you
many.
can't be perfect? I make mistakes all the time. Constantly making mistakes.
We get it. We also want to be perfect, but we have to fail to get there. So let's push the buttons and fail and keep trying and keep getting better. So we're here to help.
I'm laughing at Paul. Guys,
Paul,
you know how we do. We run this sucker out of here. Flow Riders! Out! Aloha. Mahalo.